Turn it to the left. I'm sorry. Yeah. There we go. Brilliant. Okay, so Mahabharat. You can sit back over here if you want. It's up to you. It's all the same to me. Mahabharat. So we finished last week. Oh, yes. Jarasandha is dead. Krishna, Arjuna, and Bhima, they've killed Jarasandha. Now, what is interesting is the people of Magadha, after seeing and finding out that Jarasandha was killed, they were now very worried because Jarasandha had caused so much problem. He attacked the Yadavas 18 times. He attacked no less than 86 other kings, attacked their kingdoms, imprisoned them, and was going to have a human sacrifice with them. So he had caused all kinds of problems for years all across Bharat. So the people of Magadha, they were worried that now that he's dead, is Krishna, who is a Yadava, by the way, is Krishna going to exact revenge on us for what he did in the past? So they were a bit worried. Jarasandha's son, Sahadev, he was worried as well. Now, even though Jarasandha wrote in his will, so to speak, that his son Sahadev is going to sit on the throne if something happens to him. Well, something happened, he's dead, so Sahadev is supposed to sit on the throne. But Sahadev really doesn't know what Krishna is going to do. Krishna is under no obligation to honor Jarasandha's will. Bhima and Arjuna are under no obligation to honor Jarasandha's will. So Sahadev is also anxious. He doesn't know everything is unsure, right? Krishna and Arjuna, they recognize that there's a lot of anxiety in the city of Magadha. Sahadev is anxious. So Krishna immediately, right then and there, install Sahadev on the throne of Magadha, on his father's throne as the king of Magadha, to quiet the fears of Sahadev and the people of Magadha. Sahadev was so relieved, and he said, "My dear Krishna, thank you so very much for not only just putting me on the throne, but showing such mercy and magnanimity that after my father has attacked the Yadu dynasty 18 times, your family, after my father has attacked 86 different kingdoms, captured 86 different kings and put them in prison, I expected there to be retribution on my part. I am overwhelmed by your mercy, your compassion, and I am eternally grateful. I give you my allegiance." Krishna says, "No, I don't need your allegiance for a number of reasons. Number one, Arjun and Bhima are here, and it was in fact Bhima who killed your father. It was Bhima who killed Jarasandha, not me. Your allegiance should be to Bhima and the Pandavas." So Sahadev said, "Well, very well," and he gave his allegiance to Arjuna and Bhima, but then he wanted to also give something to Krishna. So as I mentioned before, he gave his father's chariot. His father's chariot was a divine chariot. It was indestructible in battle. He gave that chariot to Krishna. And Krishna, Arjuna, Bhima, taking that chariot, they returned back to Indraprastha. Oh, and they, of course, liberated the 86 kings that Jarasandha had imprisoned in his palace dungeons. And those kings also pledged allegiance to Indraprastha, the Pandava family. So back in Indraprastha, Yudhishthira is beside himself with worry. All right, Krishna, Arjun, Bhima, they've been gone for some time to confront Jarasandha. Yudhishthira is worried. When the messenger comes running into the court, Maharaj, Krishna is coming, Arjuna, Bhima, they've come back, they're victorious. They're even riding on the chariot that was once Jarasandha's. When Yudhishthira heard this, when he got the message, he immediately arranged for a wonderful welcoming ceremony, and he himself came out with an offering plate to offer puja to Krishna. Krishna is younger than Yudhishthira, so the etiquette is that Krishna is supposed to honor Yudhishthira. But Yudhishthira was so relieved that everything worked out well and that his brothers, Arjun and Bhima, and even Krishna, had come back safe and sound, that he offered puja and worshiped Krishna right there on the spot. Then Yudhishthira ushers them into the court, and everyone wants to know how Jarasandha, remember, Jarasandha is the world's superpower of the time. What happened? So Krishna, Arjun, Bhima, they tell the story of what had happened in Magadha. And of course, we went over that story last week. So then they all, after telling the story, they all go to bed. The next day, Krishna comes to court. Yudhishthira, Arjun, Bhima, the Pandavas are there. The ministers are there. And Krishna says, my dear Yudhishthira, I've been here in Indraprastha with you for some time now. It is time for me to go back to Dwaraka and take care of my family, the Yadu dynasty there. So I must take your leave. And Yudhishthira was, no, Krishna, you can't leave now. This is the most critical part. We haven't even begun planning for the Rajasuya. Because remember, this whole Jarasandha episode, the whole purpose of killing Jarasandha was so that they can do the Rajasuya Yajna. So Yudhishthira says, we haven't even begun planning the Rajasuya Yajna. You can't leave now. In many ways, this is the most critical part of this process. Krishna says, actually, no. Jarasandha was the greatest challenge, the greatest single challenge. Sure, there are many numerous things you have to do, but the most difficult challenge was Jarasandha. He's dead. You can take it from here. I have to go back to Dwaraka. So back and forth, there's this relationship between the Pandavas and Krishna. The Pandavas saying, no, you have to stay, Krishna. I have to go, and back and forth. Then Krishna goes to Kunti, the mother of the Pandavas, goes to her palace. And Kunti says, you're leaving so soon. You only just got here. Krishna says, yes, I have to go back to Dwaraka, take care of the Yadu dynasty, my families, and so on. And Kunti says, please, whatever you do, come back as soon as you have time. So Krishna promises to once again visit his aunt, Kunti Devi, touches her feet, offers obeisances to her, she hugs him, and then Krishna goes back to Dwaraka. So now the Pandavas have to plan the next phase 2. Phase 1 of this whole Rajasuya effort, endeavor. Phase 1 was killing Jarasandha. That's done. Big challenge, big hurdle. Without doing that, nothing else was going to happen. That's now done. But in many ways, they have an even bigger challenge. Now remember, the Pandavas and Indraprastha, their kingdom of Indraprastha, it's a new kingdom. They've only just recently got this kingdom. They are first generation kings. So it's not like their kingdom, Indraprastha, has been there for hundreds of years. This is a brand new kingdom. When they married Draupadi, their father-in-law gave them a division of an army, military personnel. When Arjuna married Subhadra, then the Yadavas, Krishna and Balaram, gave the Pandavas another division of military personnel. When Bhima killed Jarasandha, Sahadev, Jarasandha's son, in his allegiance to the Pandavas, also sent an army to join the Pandavas' army. So the Pandavas have a small army, but it's new, right? It's a brand new army. They're getting it's made up of a little bit of here, a little bit of there. So they don't really have they're not a major power. Let's put it this way. They're not an established power. They're not a major power. So they have to perform the Rajasuya Yajna, they have to conquer all the kings of India, all the kings of Bharat. And these other kingdoms they've been there for hundreds, even thousands of years. So the story goes. The Pandavas are new. Now they're extraordinarily powerful. Bhima, Arjun. These are the sons of demigods. But still, the reality is they are a new, relatively insignificant world power, for lack of a better term. So they have to plan this properly. So they plan, okay, so Arjuna says, I will take a quarter of the small army that we have. He can't take them all. I'll take a quarter of the army. I'll go to the north, and I'll deal with the kings in the north of Bharat. Bhima says, okay, I'll take the elephant army, the war elephants. I will take the elephant army, the war elephants. I'll go to the east and deal with, subjugate the kings of the east. Sahadev said, okay, I'll take a quarter of the army, and I will deal with the kings of the south. I'll go south on my campaign. And Nakul said, okay, I'll take a quarter of the army, and I'll go to the west. So the Pandava, the small Pandava army, this cobbled up army, had 5 parts. 4 parts were Arjun took one north, Sahadev took one part south, Nakula took one part west, Bhima took the elephant army. It's a different division. He took the elephant division, he went east. So the remaining part of the army was kept in Indraprashta with Yudhishthir, just in case, because Bhima's gone, Arjuna's gone, 3/4 of the army is gone, the elephant division is gone. Someone could take advantage and attack Indraprashta, right? So Yudhishthir stays in Indraprashta with 1/4 of the regular army to protect it, just in case no one tries to come and take advantage of a weakened Indraprashta. So the next day, the 4 brothers, Arjuna, north, Bhima, east, Sahadev, south, Nakul, west. They head out. Now, we have to go back just a little bit. If you remember, well, it must have been, 6 months ago, last year, actually. And this part of the story, if you remember, when we went over the story of King Pandu, right, the father of the Pandavas, he did the same thing. He went on Digvijay. Digvijay is this conquering the 4 directions, establishing an empire, essentially. Pandu did this. Pandu was an extraordinarily powerful warrior, but not only was he an extraordinarily powerful warrior, he was also the consummate statesman. So wherever he went, more often than not, when he went to establish the sovereignty, the preeminence of Hastinapur, and he would come to a kingdom, that king was so impressed with Pandu, that king would willingly pledge allegiance to Hastinapur and Pandu, to be under the subjugation of the Hastinapur Empire. So many places where Pandu went, the kings would just open their gates of their city and essentially throw themselves at the feet of Pandu and pledge allegiance to Pandu and the throne of Hastinapur. He was very good at making friends. He was an incredible diplomat, an incredible statesman. However, when Pandu arrived at a kingdom and he would send the messenger, I claim this kingdom as under the sovereignty of Hastinapur. He would send that message to the king. And if the king disagreed, if the king did not want to be part of the Hastinapur Empire, he would send the messenger back, says, no, I'll meet you on the battlefield. We'll fight this out. The 2 armies would come together. Pandu would soundly defeat the other army, but he was a statesman. He would not humiliate the other king. He would not insult. He would not disrespect the other army. Quite the contrary. Pandu, after defeating that king who challenged him, after defeating that king militarily, Pandu, showing such respect and honor, he would actually win that king over, and that king would actually become a genuine friend of Pandu and Hastinapur. So Pandu really had very few true enemies throughout Bharat. So many, many years later now, his sons, Arjuna, Bhima, Nakul, and Sahadev, they're going out throughout Bharat. These older kings who remember Pandu, they're seeing his sons come to their kingdom. They open their doors. They remember how wonderful their relationship was with Pandu. They welcome Arjuna, says, yes, we will submit to the rule of Indraprashta, of Yudhishthir, of the Pandavas. And they would give a portion of their army to Arjuna. They would give a portion of their army to Bhims, wherever they were, these various brothers. So Arjuna, as he was going north, going to all these kingdoms, his army was growing bigger and bigger. And every kingdom that he went to, they would also give him treasure, gold, jewels, wealth. So Arjuna was going north and his army was swelling. And the soldiers spent more time carrying treasure than carrying their weapons. This is Arjuna's campaign north. Bhima's campaign to the east. He went to, now there's a kingdom in the east called Anga. And if you remember last year, the part of the story where Karna came into the exhibition and he wanted to challenge Arjuna. And it was Bhima who said, no, Karna is not a Kshatriya. Arjuna is a Kshatriya. Karna is not eligible to fight with Arjuna. Arjuna only fights with Kshatriyas. This is Dharma Yuddha. This is the code of the warrior code. Warriors only fight with warriors. No, they don't fight with lesser people. Duryodhan says, well, I'll give this kingdom of Anga to Duryodhan. I will give this kingdom of Anga to Karna. He is now the king of Anga. He is now a warrior. Now he can fight with Arjuna. So that is the kingdom that Duryodhan gave to Karna. It's called Anga. It was in the east. Bhima went there. Now, in this version of the Mahabharat, and there are many versions of the Mahabharat, the one I'm sharing with you, Vaishampayana's Mahabharat, there is no fight between Bhima and Karna. It just describes that Bhima arrived in Anga and he was unchallenged. He passed through Anga and kept on going east. Other versions of the Mahabharat say that Bhima and Karna got into a battle and the demigods got involved and so many. That's another version. But the version that I'm telling, the one of Vaishampayana, Bhima arrived in Anga, was unchallenged, and kept going east. Sahadev is going south. Sahadev arrives at this particular kingdom. Now, this kingdom was ruled by a king. His name was Nila. And when Sahadev arrived, he sent the customary messenger. Tell King Nila, I demand that he submit and comes under the sovereignty of Indraprashta, the Pandavas. So the messenger went into the city of King Nila, went to the court. King Nila was there, all of the generals are there, all of the ministers there, because basically, I mean, they know, right? Sahadev is outside the city limits with an army. Terrible situation. So the messenger says, my dear King Nila, this is the message from the fifth son of Pandu. You are to submit to the will of Indraprashta. You are to become an ally of Indraprashta. Pledge your allegiance to Indraprashta. King Nila said, no, absolutely, unequivocally not. Nila gets up from the throne. All of the generals, all of the ministers, all the warriors, they get up, they head out to the battlefield. King Nila brings his army. So Sahadev, the messenger, comes back. Sahadev, my dear Sahadev, King Nila says, no, he's going to go to war. So Sahadev gets his generals together. They get in battle formation. They see King Nila is coming out of the kingdom in his battle formation, and they're marching forward. King Nila comes to a particular point, and then they stop. Him and his army stop right there, and they just wait there. And Sahadev is thinking, well, what's going on here? He's ready for battle. Out of nowhere, a raging fire just erupts out of thin air. Right? This is the battlefield. There's no wood, there's no nothing to catch on fire, just fire, just flame out of nowhere, out of thin air. And it starts burning Sahadev's army, his soldiers, his horses, the elephant. It starts burning his army right then and there. They're being burned alive. And Sahadev is looking around thinking, where is this weapon coming from? Sahadev is not new to celestial magical weapons, but he needs to be able to see where it's coming from. If he cannot see the origin of the weapon, which warrior has shot it, which warrior is invoking these mantras, he doesn't see where it's coming from. It's just fire out of thin air. Sahadev gets off his chariot, sits on the ground, and he starts meditating on Agni, the god of fire. Starts praying, meditating on Agni, praying. Meanwhile, his soldiers are trying to, save themselves from this raging fire that's consuming them. Agni appears in front of Sahadev. And Sahadev folds his hands and says, my dear Agni Dev, I understand that you have caused this fire to consume my soldiers. If it wasn't caused by you, this would not happen. I know how to counteract a fire weapon. This is not a fire weapon. This is you yourself manifesting fire. Please forgive any offense that I may have committed and save my soldiers. Agni Dev snaps his fingers, and all of the burned soldiers, their burns are miraculously healed, and everything is fine. And Sahadev, hands folded, says, my dear Agni, why? Tell me the mystery of this. Why have you done this? This is uncommon. King Nila, while this is happening, King Nila and his soldiers, they're standing there just watching it. They're not doing anything. They're just sitting there watching Sahadev's army burst into flames. King Nila comes. Agni Dev is there. And Agni Dev describes, he says, this is my devotee, King Nila. And he describes the story of King Nila. King Nila was a devotee of Agni. And his devotion was such, and his sadhana, his devotional activity, was performing yajnas. King Nila always performed yajnas. He loves performing. That was his service. That was his devotion. That was his spiritual offering. That was his worship of Agni, to perform yajnas all the time. King Nila had a daughter. Her name was Kiara. Actually, when I was telling this story earlier, I could not find in my notes the daughter of King Nila. She features prominently. But one of the Gurukul students did the research for me and found out that the daughter's name was Kiara. So Kiara, King Nila's daughter, she was always there with her father and helping with these yajnas. And in fact, she was so expert at performing these yajnas that King Nila's yajnas were done to perfection because of her guidance. She was guiding the priests and everyone how to do these yajnas, sitting next to her father. So under her guidance, under her advice, King Nila's yajnas were performed to perfection, such that Agni himself would appear to see how perfect and to witness how perfect these yajnas were being done under the guidance of Kiara, Nila's daughter. When Agni would appear, seeing Kiara, he fell in love with Kiara. And he later took the form of a Brahmana. And he went to meet, after a yajna or something, he went to meet Kiara in the form of a Brahmana. Not as Agni, but in the form of a Brahmana. And he revealed himself. He says, I am Agni. I am in love with you. I would like to marry you. And Kiara said, only with my father's permission. Unfortunately, Kinila heard that his daughter is somewhere meeting with some Brahmin somewhere in the bushes. Well, not in the bushes, but anyways, meeting with some Brahmin. And Kinila is like, no, absolutely not. Who's this person trying to take advantage of my daughter? He gets his bodyguards, go running to find out what's happening with his daughter Kiara and this strange Brahmin. And he's getting ready to attack this Brahmin. This Brahmin is, of course, Agni. Agni reveals himself and he says, actually, I am Agni. And I've seen your daughter Kiara perform these most perfect yajnas. And I'm asking her hand in marriage, and she says, I have to ask you. When King Nila realized that his Ishtadev, Agni is the person whom he worships, that his God is essentially asking for his daughter in marriage, he's pleased by all means, as long as she wants it, for sure, absolutely. However, there was a however. He says, my dear Agni, you are a god. You're not going to live with my daughter on the earthly planet. You're a god. You're not going to be here all the time. I am surrounded by inimical kings. These kings are going to try to take advantage of my daughter. When I'm dead and gone, they're going to try to take advantage of my daughter because you're not around. They're going to attack the kingdom. They're going to cause all kinds of difficulty. Can you please protect the kingdom when you're not here? And so that my daughter is not taking advantage of her kingdom. This will be her kingdom. So that so that she's not taking advantage. So Agnidev says, yes, absolutely. Whenever an attacking army comes, I will burn them to ashes. And that is why when Sahadev came, even before he can get into the kingdom, his army burst into flames. So Agni explained this to Sahadev. And then Agni turns to his Nila, to his devotee, right? His devotee is Nila. He says, my dear Nila, I want you to pledge your allegiance to Sahadev and the Pandavas of Indraprastha. And they will take over protecting your kingdom. So Nila agreed, being instructed by his Ishtadev, Agni. He agreed and he offered a portion of his army to Sahadev, wealth, and so on. Sahadev continued south. He came to, what time is it? He came to Kishkinda. This is the same Kishkinda of the Ramayana, right? Vali, Sugriva, Lord Ram. It's the same Kishkinda. However, Vali and Sugriva are no longer there. Kishkinda is being managed or run, I guess you could say, by Dvidvida and Mainda. Dvidvida is the same Dvidvida gorilla that Balaram killed. It's the same Dvidvida. He's later killed by Balaram. And another Vanara whose name is Mainda. So these two are there in Kishkinda when Sahadev arrives. And these are Vanaras. They're from Treta Yuga. To deal with Sahadev, who's coming with an army talking about empire, Dvidvida, Mainda, this is child's play for them. But even so, they show respect. They say, yes, we pledge allegiance. Kishkinda will be always on the side of the Pandavas. We pledge allegiance to the Pandavas. But it was kind of like, a kindergarten, middle school kid asking for a heavyweight champion to be on their side in a match or something. It's not Dvidvida and Mainda. It's no point even challenging Sahadev and Sahadev's army because they can destroy Sahadev's army like that. They're from a completely different era. But they show respect. Absolutely, yes, we are. And Sahadev he's under no illusion when he goes to Kishkinda and he sees these powerful Vanaras from Treta Yuga. He knows that these Vanaras can just wipe out his army with one swipe of their tail. But they go through the motions, Dvidvida and Mainda, they show respect to Sahadev, and they pledge allegiance to Indraprastha and the Pandavas. Sahadev continues south. He arrives on the shore, the southern tip of Bharat, and he sends a messenger across the ocean to Lanka. The messenger arrives in Lanka. He goes to the court, and in the court is Vibhishan, same Vibhishan from Ramayana, still there. And the messenger says, "My dear Vibhishan, I'm a messenger from Sahadev and the Pandavas. We are on this campaign of Digvijay, of conquering all of Bharat. We are humbly asking for your allegiance to the Pandava throne, the Pandava Empire." Vibhishan is a Rakshasa from the race of the Rakshasas. He's, again, from a different era. He doesn't need alliance with the puny humans of this world. But like Vidvida, Minda, and the Vanaras, he honors. He says, yes, absolutely. I will pledge allegiance to the Pandavas. And he gives all kinds of wealth, unseen in all of Bharat. He gives all kinds of exotic gems and wealth and treasure to Sahadev, or to the messenger to take back to Sahadev, to fill the coffers of the Pandavas. So now Sahadev has essentially conquered all of the south. He turns his army around. His army is also swollen to 10 times its original size when he left Indraprashta. It's 10 times the size from all the kings donating divisions to the new imperial army that's taking place. And their carts are swollen with all of this wealth from all of these kings. And Sahadev heads back to Indraprashta. Last one, Nakula has gone west. Nakula has gone west. He arrives in Dwaraka. Dwaraka is to the west. And the Yadavas, they're related. Nakul meets Krishna, the Yadavas, Ugrasena. They give every kind of treasure and wealth to Nakul. They give them another division of soldiers and armies to be part of the new imperial army. So Sahadev conquers the west without any challenge, essentially. But he also meets a very important person. He meets his uncle, his mother's brother, King Shalya. When Nakul arrives in Madradesh, Madradesh is the kingdom over which Shalya is the king. When Nakul arrives in Madradesh, his uncle Shalya, the king, rushes out to meet his nephew. He's overjoyed. And he sits his nephew down and he talks to Nakul. He wants to hear all about what the Pandavas are doing and what's going on. He feeds Nakul, and he gives all kinds of wealth and treasure to Nakul, donates another battalion of soldiers to the new imperial army. And he tells Nakul, if ever you need anything, just call me and I will be there to do anything for you and you're all my nephews, 5 Pandavas. So Nakul takes all of this treasure. His army is also 10 times its original size, loaded with wealth from all of the various kingdoms of the west. And he returns to Indraprashta. So Arjuna returns from the north, Bhima returns from the east, Sahadev returns from the south, Nakul from the west. They all come back to Indraprashta. And their armies, they left with small detachment of soldiers. They came back with these massive, swollen armies of powerful, experienced soldiers from the west, from the east, from the north, from the south. They came back with all kinds of treasure. Indraprashta is now truly a new superpower in Bharat. They have the allegiance of all the kings of Bharat, north, south, east, and west. Their armies is now the biggest army, essentially, collectively, almost in all of Bharat. Indraprashta is now the world's new superpower. So we'll end there. We'll continue next Saturday. Hari Hari.